This wasn't academic learning. People with practice in the business showed me how the agricultural processes worked, and I organized what they told me into models I used to map the interactions of those parts through time. Okay, here we go. We can get started now that we have our book again. Yay. I was really getting my head into the livestock, meat, grain, and oilseed markets. I love them because they were concrete and less subject than stocks to distorted perceptions of value. While stocks could stay too low or too high because greater fools kept buying or selling them, excuse me, livestock ended up on the meat counter where it would be priced based on what consumers were willing to pay. I could visualize the process that led to those sales and see the relationships underlying them. Since livestock eat grain, mostly corn and soymeal, and since corn and soybeans compete for acreage, those markets are closely related. I learned just about everything imaginable about them, what the planted acreage and typical yields were in each of the major growing areas, how to convert rainfall levels in different weeks of the growing season into yield estimates, how to project harvest sizes, carrying costs, and livestock inventories by weight group, location, and rates of weight gain, and how to project dressing yields, retailer margins, consumer preferences by cut of meat, and the amounts to be slaughtered in each season. So, very quickly, that is a lot to think about. But if you take your time and you learn about these kinds of things, then it becomes possible for you to be able to understand how it all fits together. So as humans, we are pattern machines. We recognize patterns and we take those patterns and we say, okay, we think we have an idea of what the future will bring based on the patterns that we've seen from the past. Now, computers can do this a lot better than we can, but as humans, we are relatively good at it. One of the reasons why we don't succeed at the stock market or at commodities or other things is because we very often don't take the time to actually analyze. If we haven't analyzed, if we don't have any past data, if we haven't figured out how things are interrelated, then our brain can't give us the output, which is the answer of what's happened before and how it could turn into the future. So it's important to be able to understand, first of all, what it is that you are learning about, what it is that you're doing. And then after that, you need to start analyzing and having a look at it so that your brain can assist you to be able to figure out how it all works. But learn what it is. So you need to understand carrying costs and livestock inventories and project harvest sizes and all of those different things that Ray is talking about here. This wasn't academic learning. People with practice in the business showed me how the agricultural processes worked, and I organized what they told me into models I used to map the interactions of those parts through time. For example, by knowing how many cattle, chickens, and hogs were being fed, how much grain they ate, and how fast they gained weight, I could project both when and how much meat would come to market and when and how much corn and soymeal would be consumed. Likewise, by seeing how much acreage was planted with corn and soybeans in all the growing areas, doing regressions that showed how rainfall affected the yields in each of these areas, and applying weather forecasts and rainfall data, I could project the timing and quantity of corn and soybean production. To me, it all looked like a beautiful machine with logical cause and effect relationships. By understanding these relationships, I could come up with decision rules or principles that I could model. So this is very true. When you start to see those patterns, if there is a correlation between, let's say, for example, you know how many cows there are, and you know what the cows are going to be eating, then you're going to know whether there's going to be a need for more of the food that the cow is going to be eaten. Let's say that they're going to be fed corn. Then you need to know whether there is going to be an increased demand for corn or whether there's not going to be an increased demand for corn. So if there are more cows, more corn. So the price of corn should go up because there's a greater demand. Unless, of course, corn production goes up. Now, if corn production goes up, then if it matches the amount of cows that have increased, then it will stay the same. But if there are more cows increasing than the amount of corn, then again, price will go up because there's more demand. And if the number of cows is lower than the amount of corn that's been planted, then the price will go down because now there is too much corn and there's not enough people buying it. So the price will go down so that people can actually sell it. But another interesting thing around this is, and see if I can remember what I was going to share with you as well, weather forecast and rainfall data, all of these different things. Yes, that's what I was going to share. So most agriculture in the United States is done with John Deere equipment. Now, John Deere is a very big company that makes tractors. But nowadays, they have all of their tractors computerized, and all of these computers collect data. So the computers on the tractor will tell you whether you can harvest your crop or not, because it measures how much moisture is inside of it. It will be able to tell how much you have actually harvested throughout the day. So certain plants need to be harvested with certain moisture amounts in them. So the machine will tell you that, but it will also calculate how much you have harvested. It will weigh everything. It will know every single detail about everything. It knows how much you've sowed. It knows what you've sowed, because you put all of this data into the machine. So nowadays, there is so much information available. But of course, John Deere sells this information. So if you want access to that, you need to be able to buy it, and so on and so forth. And there's a bit of an issue with John Deere at the moment. The share price was actually down. And one of the reasons for that is because they won't allow you to let anybody repair your John Deere tractor unless it is a John Deere authorized repairer. But because they are computerized, they break down very, very easily. And so farmers are a little bit upset that the John Deere equipment breaks down and that they can't just fix it themselves, that they have to pay extra to get John Deere to fix it. And they're a bit concerned about the fact that all of this information is now being collected, and that is being given to insurance companies, that is being given to livestock producers, it's given to all of these different people that are then able to exploit that information to charge the farmers more and do all of these different kinds of things. And it's also very handy, obviously, for futures traders. But the idea being that there's a lot of information out there and it's being collected, and it makes this what Ray is talking about, the weather forecast and the rainfall and all of these kinds of things. It makes for even more information. That makes it easier for you to have a better idea of what could be going on. So keep that in mind if the futures market is something that interests you after this story. These early models were a far cry from the ones we use now. They were back-of-the-envelope sketches analyzed and converted into computergrams with the programs with the technology. Converted into computer programs with the technology I could afford at the time. At the very beginning, I did regressions on my handheld Hewlett-Packard HP67 calculator, plotted charts by hand with colored pencils, and recorded every trade in composition notebooks. When the personal computer came along, I could input the numbers and watch them be converted into pictures of what would happen on spreadsheets. Knowing how cattle, hogs, and chickens progressed through their stages of production, how they competed for meat eaters' dollars, what meat eaters would spend and why, and how the profit margins of meat eaters and retailers would influence their behaviors, for example, which cuts of meat they would push in advertisements, I could see how the production produced cattle, hog, and chicken prices that I could bet on. As basic as those early models were, I loved building and refining them, and they were good enough to make money. The approach to price determination I was using was different from the one I had learned in my economics classes, where supply and demand were both measured in terms of quantity sold. I found it much more practical to measure demand as the amount spent instead of as the quantity bought, and to look at who the buyers and sellers were and why they bought and sold. I will explain this approach in economic and investment principles. This different approach was one of the key reasons I caught economic and market moves others missed. From that point on, whenever I looked at any market, commodities, stocks, bonds, currencies, whatever, I could see and understand imbalances that others who define supply and demand in the traditional way as units that equaled each other missed. Visualizing complex systems as machines, figuring out the cause-effect relationships within them, writing down the principles for dealing with them, and feeding them into the computer so the computer could make decisions for me all became standard practices. Now, the other interesting thing is that some people are going to enjoy doing this, and some people do not. And so some people will look at, or will come up to me and tell me, but I don't enjoy that kind of thing. I am not interested in those calculations. How do I create wealth? Now, if you see this as something viable, for example, either you can push yourself to become interested and you can see the payoff at the end and you know why you're doing it. And if your why is strong enough, you'll be able to do that. If not, then you might start looking at, can I hire somebody? Can I find somebody? Well, maybe not even hire. Sometimes you can just find somebody and you say, look, I have an idea. If you can help me with the numbers, then I will place the trades. I understand how that side works. If we work together, we can share some of the profits. So you can either do it on your own, you can push yourself to see the benefits of going through this challenging thing that you don't like doing, or you can look for somebody who really enjoys it, doesn't really see the point or doesn't really want to do it, and you can give them a part of the profits. There are different ways of doing these things. Just be careful that you don't show somebody how to do something and then they run off with everything. That's the only thing you need to watch out for. But there are different ways of doing this. That was most of my net worth. Sorry, don't get me wrong. My approach was far from perfect. I vividly remember one can't lose bet that personally cost me about $100,000. That was most of my net worth at the time. More painful still, it hurt my clients too. The most painful lesson that was repeatedly hammered home is that you can never be sure of anything. There are always risks out there that can hurt you badly, even in the seemingly safest bets, so it's always best to assume you're missing something. This lesson changed my approach to decision-making in ways that will reverberate throughout this book, and to which I attribute much of my success. But I would make many other mistakes before I fully changed my behavior. This last part is very important because it is absolutely true that even safe bets, even things that are almost guaranteed, will potentially go wrong at some point. So there is no such thing as a guaranteed bet. Let's take, for example, that you have set up something very nice. You have a new business plan and you are certain because you've already got people who have signed up that they want to be clients and you have everything in place. You've done risk assessments, risk management, and you are very careful with everything that you do. And then all of a sudden coronavirus comes and you are shut down for the first, let's say you're in Melbourne and you're shut down for a whole month, maybe even more than a month. Now, a lot of those people who would have come are not going to come, and some of those memberships might be canceled. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a completely different situation, even though you did so much due diligence and you were so careful and you already had clients lined up and everything was exactly as you had planned. And this is just how life goes. So never think that anything is 100% sure, and always take the time to have a look at and have contingencies for if things don't go according to plan. I have seen many times that things that people think are a sure thing have black swan occurrences. So black swans are a bird that they thought didn't exist until people came to Australia and they discovered black swans. So something that is highly unlikely, that has a 99% chance of not happening, that is a black swan. And I see black swans all around all the time when people think that they have an absolutely 100% surefire thing. Okay, so tomorrow we will continue with building the business. I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow I should have my book here in the room, and I will have my side with the page marked, and then I'll make sure that I memorize it as well. So we're on page 22 to make sure that that is the case. Now, if you enjoyed that and if you'd like to see previous chapters that we've read, if you would be interested in seeing Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and having me read that and my commentary, if you would like to see the other books and other videos that we have available, you can find those at the Passive Cash Flow Club on YouTube. Would love to see you on the Passive Cash Flow Club. Make sure you subscribe. We've got lots of new videos coming up. We have also a section now where we're going to be answering your questions. So if you would like to ask a question, feel free to go to Instagram and you can message me directly. I know that everybody on Bigo, you have the ability to send me a message on Bigo, but my Bigo is full of spam. So it's really difficult to see the forest for the trees. So feel free on Bigo to actually join me on Instagram as well. That way I can actually see your message and I will respond much quicker than on Bigo, where I have to sift through everybody that's real and who is not real, who has watched and who has not watched my videos. So feel free to reach out on Instagram. business_team_6_official is where you'll find me. I am looking forward to getting to know you. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and then creating videos with the answers and putting those up on YouTube for you. And if you would be interested in Cash Flow, Robert Kiyosaki's amazing game where you can start to learn about investing and start putting it into practice in a safe way, because it's all monopoly money, then you can also reach out on Instagram and send me a message and let me know, and I'll make sure that my VA, my virtual assistant, will send you a message with the details on how you can come and join us. And not only do we have the traditional board game, but we also have a more advanced online version with more realistic taxation. We are setting up a course that you can go through so that you can learn the elements and actually translate it from the game into real life. So that is what we are doing now, which is very exciting because that allows people to be able to really learn the principles. It's really like a course that is going to teach you how to get the basics of investing, how to go out and actually take the first action steps, and how to implement it further. And if you're more advanced, we will know that you are more advanced, and we will put you into a group with masterminds and networking opportunities and guest presenters and all of these different things that are going to give you the advantages that you need. So I am going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it with, remember to make the switch to unlock your rich. And then I'm going to go back to Bigo and follow everybody there and make sure that, yes, I answer everybody's questions there. But if you're on the Zoom, if you're on the recording, we're going to leave it there. And I'll see you for another reading tomorrow morning. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And thank you, as always, for joining.